got a problem here. You're going to have to teach this kid how to talk the way you want to talk. And I thought, why don't I just talk the way he talks right now? And so we started hanging out with him.
Tom Hanks as Forrest, a simple guy who lives an extraordinary life, Forrest Gump has become a memorable experience for the audience. But few people know that Forrest Gump is not only famous for its touching story, but also for its humorous mistakes in the making of the film. Let's explore behind the scenes of this classic work, even though a lot of people have been curious as to whether or not this is an actual story. No, that's correct. That's the shortest response. Forrest Gump is entirely fictional, yet it does draw on actual historical events. Although Tom Hanks's legendary performance as Forrest Gump isn't based on a specific real-life figure, this is where the plot thickens. Significant historical events and a small number of people served as inspiration for the character. Winston Groom wrote a novel in 1986 and dedicated it to his friends. The film is based on it. Jembo, George Radcliffe, and although many credit Meter as Gump's primary influence, even he acknowledged that the character was inspired by a multitude of people. So what happened to make Forrest Gump what he is? The groom's father told him a story, and that was the beginning. Groom, captivated by the idea and motivated by his father's story, started taking notes during the chat in the hopes of using it as a scene in a novel before the night's conclusion. Now that he has finished writing Forrest Gump's opening chapter, let's change gears and examine Benjamin Buford's character. The character of Bubba Blue, portrayed by the brilliant Michael T. Williamson, differs significantly from the book version of the character in the screenplay that Williamson adapted for the film. Because of his exceptional intelligence and quick wit, Bubba was supposed to serve as a role model for Forrest. Williamson, on the other hand, had a different idea of what Bubba should be like. In his mind, the only way for their relationship to work was if Bubba was seen as intellectually and physically equal to Forrest. It was Williamson's mission to give Bubba the genuine charisma and charismatic performance that made him a fan favorite. By today's standards, his portrayal of Bubba may be seen as neurodivergent. Williamson earned justifiable praise for his performance after taking a risk that gave his interpretation more nuance and emotion. However, Williamson nearly missed out on the opportunity to give Bubba Gump the life he has become known for. The first myth regarding Dave Chappelle that has to be dispelled is this. The common belief is that he declined the part of Bubba due to his views on the character's racial demeaningness. In any case, that's not all. Even Chappelle turned down the chance to star in the film because he was pessimistic about its box office performance. As Forrest Gump gained widespread popularity, he surely began to regret his choice. Now let's talk about Ice Cube and David Alan Grier, both of whom passed on the opportunity to star in this groundbreaking film. Grier allegedly turned down the position because he was uncomfortable portraying a mentally impaired character. He preferred to play tough guys to fit in with his rapper character unless he was playing the lead part in an Ice Cube film. Nevertheless, after seeing the phenomenal success of Forrest Gump, rumors started circulating that the two stars regretted their choices. I mean, who could blame them? It would be a shame to pass on a picture that became an Oscar and box office sensation and won 6 of them. Forrest Gump fans still wonder, despite the film's popularity, why Hanks turned down the role. Will there be a sequel to Forrest Gump? But here's the thing, everyone thought Tom Hanks would be overjoyed to play the charming, slow-witted hero again. Things work out differently. Undoubtedly, Tom Hanks's portrayal of Forrest Gump was a watershed moment in his career, leading to his second straight Best Actor Oscar. Given the film's lasting impact on popular culture, including the incessant quips about life being a box of chocolates and Forrest's unwavering love for Jenny, the sequel would seem like a reasonable choice. Tom Hanks, though, has been less than thrilled with the concept. Winston Groom's Gump and Company provides enough material for a sequel, but the reality is, in a 2022 interview with Variety, Hanks reiterated his unwillingness to return to the role, even though the studio reportedly tried to get a sequel off the ground. He claimed, "I've always been open to doing anything if there's a good reason to, but that you can't make me." Indeed, Hanks has confessed that he entertained the idea of a Forrest Gump sequel for a mere 40 minutes at one point. In the current state of the film business, when every potential sequel seems to have been produced, it's hard to fathom that it wasn't. The possibility to profit from popular films is widely sought after. Still, Hanks has never wavered in his position on the subject. Hanks seems to have stated his belief that the original film adequately depicted Forrest's narrative and did not require any additional explanation based on his remarks. After all, we can't dispute Tom Hanks's opinion. A lot of people think it would be a bad idea to make a sequel, possibly diminishing the original's legacy. Having said that, the real reason for the decision to forego a sequel was not limited to concerns over a lackluster continuation. One of the reasons for this is that on September 10, 2001, the studio really received the script for a possible sequel that was written by Eric Roth. The notion of a sequel was shelved after Roth, Hanks, and filmmaker Robert Zemeckis publicly voiced their disapproval of the screenplay, claiming it did not reflect the current state of affairs. The roles of Lieutenant Dan and Forrest Gump, in which Gary Sinise excelled, are usually what come to mind when people think of him. No one could have played Forrest's platoon leader in the Vietnam War quite like Gary Sinise. However, as we've already established, he wasn't the initial pick for the position. Can you guess who was originally considered for the role of Lieutenant Dan? Kevin Bacon's. For whatever reason, Forrest Gump director Robert Zemeckis wanted Bacon to play the lead part, but Bacon declined, allowing Gary Sinise to come in and provide a performance that would be remembered forever. It's interesting to speculate on the potential outcomes of the film had Bacon played the lead. Would you have seen the same level of passion and complexity from him in Lieutenant Dan as you saw from Sinise? My name is Jenny Curran. It's common knowledge that Robin Wright was brilliant as Jenny Curran in Forrest Gump. Contrary to popular belief, she was indeed considered for the part, but ultimately passed on it. Jodie Foster was reportedly considered for the role among 3 other leading females: new couple Demi Moore and Nicole Kidman. Any one of these brilliant actresses could play Jenny with ease. But the reality is that every one of them declined it. Therefore, it is inconceivable that 3 outstanding actresses, such as Foster, Moore, and Kidman, would decline such a significant leading part. Likely, they were simply too preoccupied with other initiatives right at that moment. Jodie Foster was busy impressing viewers with her portrayal of Nell, for which she was awarded a Screen Actors Guild Award, which she earned. In addition to Nicole Kidman, who was making huge movements with films like Far and Away and Malice All, while negotiating her high-profile marriage to Tom Cruise, Demi Moore was lighting up the big screen with blockbusters like A Few Good Men, Indecent Proposal, and Disclosure. Let's not forget about Nicole Kidman, but it's possible that everything turned out for the best in the end. The performance that Robin Wright gave in Forrest Gump is nothing short of iconic. In addition, it is difficult to conceive of anybody else who could bring Jenny to life in the same manner. Even though the film adaptation of Forrest Gump is great, there are still a few elements that we cleverly left out of the picture. Now let's take a more in-depth look at the concealed information. During the game of ping pong, did you happen to notice that Forrest never once blinked from time to time? When you watch the movie again, pay greater attention to the role played by Tom Hanks, and you will see that he keeps a steady glance at the audience. When he was first learning how to play ping pong, he was doing so for the entirety of the game. It is one of his fellow troops who advises him that the key to winning the game is to keep his eyes on the ball, and from that moment on, he does exactly that. In addition, were you aware that the anti-war march was both a genuine and phony event? While attending the large anti-war protest, Forrest and Jenny are eventually able to get back together, which serves as the emotional finale of the film Forrest Gump. The rally, on the other hand, was both genuine and false, which is something that a lot of people might not recognize. The facts behind the development of the scene are just as intriguing as the sequence itself, which is a poignant point in the movie. Even when there are actual demonstrations and rallies taking place, it is extremely difficult to pack the National Mall, which is located in Washington, District of Columbia. To make it work for a movie is an even more difficult task. In order to make it appear as though there was a big rally that we see on film, the creators of Forrest Gump were able to make it work by first coordinating the participation of 1,500 extras and then grouping them together in various locations for separate takes. After that, they blended the crowds at the same time. Ping Pong Ball was computer-generated imagery, which is another item that could surprise some people. These seemingly incredible feats of ping pong expertise were accomplished with the use of computer-generated imagery, CGI, even though Forrest's ping pong talents are undeniably outstanding. In the crowd for Forrest Gump, there were probably not a lot of people who were skilled at playing ping-pong balls. On the other hand, anyone who watched such sequences would undoubtedly anticipate that there was some type of film trickery going on. The abilities that were displayed would certainly be too tough to be displayed. The next time you see Forrest Gump, keep these revelations in mind and see if you can find any additional shocks that have been concealed. Even for an actor who had taken months of training to attain, this is something that you should keep in mind. Thomas Hanks's physical clone. The identity of Tom Hanks's younger brother Jim Hanks, who served as his body double in several sequences from the legendary film Forrest Gump, has suddenly come to light. Although a lot of admirers would have thought that it was a professional look-alike or a stunt double replacing the Hollywood star, it turned out to be none of those things. There are several instances in which Jim Hanks filled in for his brother, and the reality is that he did so. You may be thinking that this is not possible. How could you have possibly overlooked this? Indeed, it is true that Tom has relied on Jim Hanks as his secret weapon. Jim's shining moment comes in the legendary running moments in Forrest Gump, while you are marveling at Tom's portrayal of Forrest Gump's epic cross-country trek. He stepped in as his body double for particular parts in some of his most renowned films, and the most mind-blowing section is the one in which he played the role of Jim. Jim was the one who was putting in the miles. It is important to bear in mind that things are not always as they appear, and the next time you watch Forrest Gump, you should keep an eye out for Jim Hanks's cameo appearance as Tom's doppelganger. When we think of the movie Forrest Gump, we often marvel at its seamless integration of historical figures into the narrative, from encounters with John F. Kennedy to a meeting with John Lennon on the Dick Cavett Show. The film seemingly effortlessly weaves these real-life personalities into its fictional world. On the other hand, other aspects were not quite accurate, such as the scene on the Dick Cavett program in which Forrest meets John Lennon. A great number of spectators were taken aback by the flawless conversation that took place between the figure played by Tom Hanks and the iconic singer. Nevertheless, here is the terrible reality. For the sake of the movie, the video of John Lennon was not reconstructed. As an alternative, it was a genuine video of John Lennon from his participation in the program in 1971. They did not simply replay history, rather, they incorporated Forrest Gump into it in a seamless manner. Furthermore, Lennon is not the only person who makes a cameo appearance in the film. John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon are just two of the notable actors who have appeared on screen alongside our dearly adored Forrest. Many thanks to the skillful modification of old film and the ingenious merging of new moments into the original footage. One further scene that stands out as a significant one in the movie is when Forrest is awarded the Medal of Honor for his gallantry during the Vietnam War. The video of Forrest receiving the medal, on the other hand, did not truly show Forrest receiving the award. It was an actual film from the ceremony that took place in 1968 for Samuel Davis after he had been awarded the medal for his service. It was as simple as placing Hank's face on Davis's body. Remember Lieutenant Dan's legs? Many fans were left wondering whether actor Gary Sinise did not have any legs, and they were left scratching their heads. On the other hand, if it was merely another feat of cinematic wizardry, you should get ready to be surprised to produce the impression of Lieutenant Dan's state of being legless. In reality, Sinise was seated in a wheelchair while wearing a blue cloth, which was then customized through digital editing to give the impression that she had lost a leg. It wasn't simply the brilliant camera angles and prosthetics that left people in awe. It was also a work of computer-generated imagery, CGI deception. Now let's speak about the debate that never seems to stop. Would you believe that Elvis Presley and Forrest Gump made such a claim? Some people are certain that it was an imposter, while others are less persuaded. This was a genuine article. Brace yourselves, for there is still another stunning discovery to come. A. Elvis. If we consider the film Forrest Gump, an encounter between young Forrest and the legendary Elvis Presley is one of the most unforgettable sequences in the movie. It is common knowledge that Forrest performed his hilarious jingle with his legs, which ultimately resulted in the well-known Elvis Hound Dog Dance. Nevertheless, here is the terrible reality. Elvis was not the person in question. In point of fact, Peter Dobson was the actor who portrayed the role of Elvis. It was decided to obscure the face of the person in order to conceal his features and make him appear more like the rock and roll king. But the thing that takes everyone by surprise is the fact that Kurt Russell was the one who delivered the voice of Elvis. In that legendary sequence, Kurt Russell, who is recognized for his appearances in Hollywood films that have created blockbuster box office hits, provided the voice of Elvis Presley. However, this was not the first time that Kurt Russell had played Elvis in a television movie that was produced in 1979. Under the direction of John Carpenter, it would appear that Russell has a natural talent for channeling the renowned singer, and his performance in Forrest Gump was simply another feather in his cap. Russell took on the role of Elvis. It is interesting to note that Kurt Russell's link to Elvis dates even further back, to the film that was released in 1963. During the World's Fair, a little Russell, who was only a few inches tall, was allowed to share screen time with the king himself, Sally Field, who was the same age in the film Forrest Gump. When we think of Sally Field in the legendary character of Mrs. Gump, we see a protective and nurturing mother who had faith in her son Forrest from the very beginning of their relationship. At the time that Forrest Gump was being filmed, Sally Field was just 10 years older than Tom Hanks, who played her son in the movie. This is a stunning fact that has been revealed. The age difference between Field and Hanks was 47 years. The relationship between the two characters is definitely given a fresh perspective as a result of this revelation. The irony of a relatively young actress playing the mother of a guy who is not too far away from her own age is not something that can be taken lightly. The revelation is comparable to discovering that your favorite television mother is, in fact, your aunt. Something that makes this situation even more peculiar is the fact that Hanks and Field had featured together in a movie called Punchline just a few years before Forrest Gump. In this movie, Hanks's character developed love emotions for Field's character. Imagine viewing the Punchline after seeing Forrest Gump. The experience is akin to being in a strange time warp, in which the love protagonists from one film mysteriously morph into mother and son in another temporal mistake. The movie was able to chronicle a great deal of historical happenings. On the other hand, there was a little oversight. Jenny's letter was sent 1.5 years after the occurrence, which is a situation that just does not make sense. Due to the fact that you can heard the news of the assassination attempt on President Reagan on March 30th, 1981, we are aware of this fact. Furthermore, when it comes to authenticity, those riveting moments from the Vietnam War were not truly created in Vietnam. To give the impression that they were in a jungle, they were recorded on the Fripp Islands, which are located off the coast of North Carolina. They did such a terrific job that you would never believe that they weren't actually in Vietnam during the war. The kids on the bus, they had to utilize computer-generated imagery, CGI. Do you remember the scenario that took place on the school bus? You might have thought that the children who made fun of Forrest were just random child actors. That being said, the child who refused to let Forrest sit with him was the son of the director of the film, Robert Zemeckis, and the girl who refused to share her seat with Forrest was Tom Hanks, his daughter. Now, just out of curiosity, would you still adore Forrest Gump if John Travolta played the role of Gump? We are in agreement that it is difficult to conceive of anybody other than Tom Hanks making that wonderful slow-witted character come to life. However, just for the sake of entertainment, let's entertain the concept visually. With a box of chocolates in his hand, John Travolta embarks on a journey throughout the United States. To say the least, it is a hilarious image of Travolta Gump. Tom Hanks's portrayal of the endearing and simple-minded character Forrest Gump won over the hearts of moviegoers everywhere. His unadulterated kindness and genuine sweetness brought tears to our eyes and joy to our spirits. If we were to tell you that the famous part was almost given to someone else, what would you think? Please don't get us wrong, John Travolta was indeed considered for the part of Gump at one point in time. As an actor in his own right, John Travolta is a gifted individual. But are you not of the opinion that it is difficult to see anyone other than Tom Hanks bringing the character of Gump to life? There is no guilt. In every way, shape and form, Tom Hanks embodies the qualities of charm and youthful curiosity. However, it is still true that Travolta was seriously considered for the part, but he ultimately decided against accepting it. In this section, we will discuss some of the rumors and ideas that have been circulating regarding the movie. Errors that are speculated getting lost in a fantastic movie is something that all of us enjoy doing. On the other hand, there are instances when we can't help but notice those insignificant elements that don't quite make sense. I want to take the girl who vanished. It's possible that you saw that in the moment on the bus. There is a little girl seated behind Forrest and Jenny, but hold on a second, because they are going to replay the scene once more. No one has been able to locate her. Could it be that she performed a Houdini trick? Or could it be that the directors just failed to keep an eye on their extras? We may never know, and then there is the peculiar case of the basketball court. In the middle of the 1970s, Forrest was practicing on a court, and watchers with sharp eyes noticed something that seemed suspicious. A three-point line now, hang on just a second, was the three-point line not incorporated until 1979. There are many more hidden mistakes that you may notice in happy faces in the fictional film Forrest Gump. During the late 1970s, it is inferred that our beloved Forrest Gump was the source of inspiration for this particular visual representation. On the other hand, let's delve a bit further and find out the information. Even though the movie could give us the impression that Forrest Gump was the inspiration for the cheerful face, there are genuinely numerous differences of opinion concerning its beginnings. In the middle of the 1960s, long before Forrest was on the scene, there are many who believe that it was first utilized. In point of fact, there are critics who have pointed out that in the early 1970s, brothers Murray and Bernard Spain were the ones who truly advanced the smiling face to levels that were before unattainable. They used the picture in drive-to-market novelty goods such as pinback buttons while they were selling them. And by the time the late 1970s rolled around, the smiley face had already achieved its pinnacle of popularity. It became a symbol of the times in a very short amount of time. Although Forrest Gump may have been involved in a great deal of exciting experiences, it was no longer the latest trend that the movie implies it was. There is a possibility that none of them were responsible for the happy face logo. A case of déjà vu. Although it's a touching story about a lost love and a cross-country race, we could have missed a few subtle truths. After giving an uplifting speech in front of the reflecting pool, Forrest sprints down the aisle to see Jenny. Not once, but twice does he pass a man donning a top hat. In the film, this may appear to be an odd coincidence. However, after all, it's probably just a matter of skillful editing. In a crowd of thousands, what are the chances of seeing the same person wearing a top hat twice? Very unlikely. In a similar vein, the camera repeatedly pans over the same 5 or 6 people as Forrest and Jenny walk by a lighted vigil outside the White House. The 2 security officers at the entrance, at least, as they appear to make a circuitous round around the area. Once again, this may appear like a delightful coincidence in the film. On the other hand, realistic filming limitations are probably to blame in the actual world. It would be impractical to block off Pennsylvania Avenue for several days to capture the ideal photo. Although Forrest Gump is undeniably a masterpiece, can you believe it? Keep in mind that fictional depictions of real-life events do not always reflect the truth. As long as the tale keeps us amused and motivated, a little imagination goes a long way. Repairing glass. At Jenny's former residence in Greenbow, Alabama, one of the most puzzling scenes takes place when she smashes a window with a rock. After that, we see Forrest reassuring her on the floor, and sure enough, the window is suddenly mended. Do you know what happens when a damaged window fixes itself? It was able to fix itself in the nick of time. Although Forrest Gump's seasonal irregularities are a bit of a bummer, we still really enjoyed the film. During the demonstration at the Washington Monument, the footage also shows some fairly perplexing seasonal discrepancies. The lack of leaves on the trees behind Forrest on the stage suggests that it is late fall or winter, adding to the verdant variety of greenery that would confound even the most seasoned botanist. But there are verdant trees all around the reflecting pool in front of him. Imagine an entirely new season, and we must not overlook the moment when, as Forrest watches Jenny get on the bus, a kaleidoscope of multicolored tree leaves, reminiscent of the height of autumn, suddenly appears. This is as if Mother Nature herself was unable to decide how to return to the sender. Here we have a perfect example of postal misunderstanding. While Forrest is in the hospital healing from a fairly terrible butt injury, he receives his letters from Jenny back. Now this is where things start to get interesting. The envelope's zip codes are completely disorganized. Zip number 39902 appears on one envelope and zip code 96602 on the other. And just when you think you've got it figured out, the remaining envelope's zip codes revert to 39992. How come the erroneous logos appear on so many envelopes? You'll never forget the 1972 New Year's Eve party scene where Forrest is seen having a draft. Capsicum. This particular detail was a bit off, and then there's the moment during one of Forrest's shrimping endeavors in 1974 where he comes across a mellow yellow can amongst a collection of debris, the catch. The only problem is that the logo on the Dr. Pepper can wasn't conceptualized until the middle of the 1980s. Unless Forrest had a time machine stashed away somewhere, it's safe to say that this particular detail was rather off. In addition to the fact that the can itself displays a new logo that wasn't launched until 1989, the color mellow yellow didn't truly make its appearance until 1979. It appears that someone didn't do their study on the history of soda snowfall. There is a scenario that stands out in Forrest's mind where he is standing outside the stage entrance at the Dick Cavett concert. There is no snow in sight. Nevertheless, a few seconds later, when Lieutenant Dan slides down the ramp, it is suddenly blanketed with snow. Unless Mother Nature is suffering from a severe case of selective timing, this appears to be the case. There is little doubt that this is an example of cinematic magic at its most exquisitely incorrect rank. How Lieutenant Dan refers to Forrest, although Forrest has attained the rank of sergeant, is one of the most glaringly inaccurate situations shown in the film. Throughout the movie, Lieutenant Dan refers to him as Private Gump on many occasions. This mistake is brought to light by the fact that Forrest is wearing a patch on his sleeve that reads Sergeant, which makes it quite evident that he is a sergeant. The first few moments of the film show Forrest having a difficult time walking while wearing his leg braces. When he and Jenny race to their favorite tree, he mysteriously appears to run normally, even though he can't sprint. Even though he continues to wear the braces, he eventually returns to his previous gait while wearing them as he is being pursued by bullies on bicycles. It is not until the braces are removed that he can run without any difficulty. This is a truly amazing sort of recuperation. A passing of Jenny. As the movie progresses, Jenny passes away from an unidentified sickness 2 years after she and Forrest had tied the knot. It is a common misconception that the cause of death was AIDS, because the scene took place during the height of the AIDS epidemic in the United States. However, this was not the intention of the author when she passed away. According to his plan, she would have passed away from hepatitis C as a result of her drug use.